And we've got a special guest for us, a guest from Calgary. We actually haven't really done any market updates in Alberta, so I'm excited to have Tristan Quiring on the channel today. What does the Calgary real estate market cycle look like? Because I think it's a little bit different than what we experience here in Ontario.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's we're very one sector dependent when it comes to our economy and how we function. Oil and gas is what we're known for. Lately we've had to transition and pivot into other sectors. Different city to be in, very different market than the big centers out east and even Vancouver, for example. One thing that the downtown is known for, we have the highest concentration of head offices. Part of that's because again, heavy into the oil. We have transitioned more into tech. We have a lot of tech companies coming in, which is great because it's diversifying our market a bit. Total residential benchmark prices per district. So there's 8 districts in Calgary. Detached price is definitely leading the charge. 13% increase year after year.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and we're back, and we've got a special guest for us, a guest from Calgary. So we actually haven't really done any market updates in Alberta, so I'm excited to have Tristan Quiring on the channel today, and we're going to be discussing essentially what exactly is going on in the world of Calgary. But before we get into Calgary's June stats, Tristan, how's it going?
Good, man. How you doing?
Good. And so essentially, we were chatting beforehand, not exactly born and raised, but you've spent pretty much all your time in Calgary. So do you mind just kind of, both for the audience as well as just anyone that's maybe new to Calgary, what's your background with Calgary and what should we maybe know about some of the highlights when thinking Calgary real estate?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a good question. I mean, so like a lot of people in Calgary, I'm not actually born in Calgary. A lot of people have come over from, Saskatchewan, like myself. I was born in Saskatoon. Came over with my family when I was a little bit younger, but spent a lot of time here growing up. Absolutely love the city, and did spend some time in BC after that for about 8 years, but eventually came back to call it home once again. So happy to be back.
Awesome. And so you've been a realtor now in Calgary for about 2 years?
Yeah, just over 2 years. I was in Vancouver in the car business for about 4 or 5 years, and eventually got the opportunity to come back and get my real estate license and start going with the team here in Calgary, and never looked back. Real estate has been my passion ever since, and yeah, especially in Calgary, I think it's a great place to live, and I would definitely a big encourager for people to move out here.
Yeah, well, I definitely know Alberta's a constant area that gets a lot of like inner Canada migration, right? Lots of Canadians move there when the times are good. Sometimes they move back. So I'm also curious, and maybe we'll get into it during your presentation, but just understanding, the broad strokes of what does the Calgary real estate market cycle look like? Because I think it's a little bit different than what we experience here in Ontario, where in Ontario, we don't necessarily see the kind of the boom bust cycle as much. It's much more like either it's kind of flat or we're ticking upwards, where you guys actually see a lot more price swings. And I often think of it as kind of more like an American real estate market, where you can be up and down and sideways all within the same decade quite often.
Just like the weather.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Just like almost any Canadian weather, but I'm sure even particularly in Alberta.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's we're very, one sector dependent when it comes to our economy and how we function. Oil and gas is what we're known for, obviously. Lately we've had to transition and pivot into other sectors a bit more, just because of the recent crash in 2014-15 has caused a huge drop in real estate. And then what we're experiencing now across the world is kind of unprecedented everywhere. So it's very interesting to see. Typically, we do experience those booms and crashes, every 20 years, it seems like. And yeah, the most recent one being in 2014 there. So yeah, it's very interesting. Different city to be in, very different market than the big centers out east and even Vancouver, for example.
All right. Well, I'm excited to jump in. I know you've got a presentation ready for us, and we're going to chat a bit more about Calgary in the presentation.
All right. So yeah, we're in June. It's kind of crazy that we're halfway through the year already. But yeah, it's been a different year for real estate altogether. Again, all across markets, not just in Calgary, but I know you guys have been experiencing some crazy stuff going on in Ontario as well. But just kind of walk you through a bit about this. I am a certified condo specialist here in Calgary. There's another course that you
And
do
so
take.
what does that mean, Tristan? Because I'm not sure if we've got the same thing here in Ontario. So
Yeah, a little different. So being a certified condominium specialist, basically, you shouldn't be trading in condos if you aren't one, just because there's a lot more variables to take place when purchasing and selling a condo. You're basically part of a corporation, part of a business when you're buying into a condo. So there's lots to know about, a lot more variables than buying a single family home, for example, where it's just a lot more simplified. But there is a separate designation for that here in Alberta.
interesting.
Yeah. And so jumping into the report here, I kind of want to talk a bit about Calgary. I know lots of your listeners are out east. Maybe not a lot know about what makes up Calgary.
I'm glad you got a map here, because that was going to be one of the first things is, can you break down the neighborhoods for us? So I love it.
Yeah, for sure. We're quite a big city. Like growing up here, it definitely feels a lot different than it did back then when it had a population of 800,000. I remember in the newspaper the day we hit 1 million, there was a big article about it, and now we're already up at 1.54, which is a little bit crazy to think about. But yeah, Calgary, it's very sprawled out. It's got one of the biggest urban sprawls in North America at 848 square kilometers, which is huge. You can drive, down Deerfoot, which is one of the major arteries here in Calgary, for 45 minutes and still not get to the end. So it does go on for a long ways. And everyone here, we're divided into quadrants. So a little bit different than lots of cities out there. When you ask someone where they're from, instead of giving you a community, they'll say, I'm from the Northwest, or I'm from the Southeast, because it is divided into those 4 major quadrants. From an MLS perspective, there are 8 different sectors. I'm not sure if you can see the legend down here, but it's highlighted here. So purple is your city center. You got your northwest, northeast, and then your deep north, deep south, and then a ring road that goes all the way around called Stony Trail. That wasn't always there. So the commutes weren't great until the last 10 years here, when that road was developed to kind of just ease traffic and really help, speed up things commuting across Calgary. So it's allowed people to build outwards and live on the outskirts, like the deep north here, where they're developing new communities in the south, and have a quicker commute to downtown if that's where they're working.
Interesting, yeah.
And so Calgary itself, we sit very high above sea level. Not sure if you're into golf, but sitting at 3,400 square feet above sea level, your golf ball does fly a lot further, which is great. It's also very dry. What that means, so bring lotion if you're going to move to Calgary, because your skin, it will dry up like a raisin in winter. It's a little bit hard to get used to, especially coming from like the humid climates out east or in Vancouver, where you just don't experience the same kind of dry weather that you do here. And that being said, we have what's called Chinooks. So it's the warm winds coming over from the Rocky Mountains from the west, and you can have plus 20 one day, or sorry, minus 20 one day, and 2 days later it'll be plus 20. So it's drastic temperature changes. That can cause a lot of people with migraines struggle actually here because of the pressure changes. It's kind of tough for that, but it's pretty crazy to see the fluctuations in the temperature out here.
I'm guessing a lot of the condos and stuff are maybe in the core, but is there a certain market that you really focus on, or is there a certain, I guess, quadrant that you find investors are naturally drawn to?
Yes, there's actually lots of opportunities in the core right now, just because of the way things have gone the past 6 years. In 2014, obviously with the crash of oil prices, a lot of the residential, like multi-residential in the inner city, has been hurting. For the last 6 years, it's been an all-time low. And this last year, it's been recovering a little bit, but there's some really great opportunities to be had in the inner city when it comes to condos, apartments, and things like that, because you are at an all-time low. It's amazing actually what you can enter into the market with downtown. 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo, relatively new and updated, you can get into for around 300,000. So it's a little bit insane in contrast to Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, Calgary's home to couple professional sports teams, Calgary Flames, of course, Calgary Stampeders, and we are one of the youngest cities actually in Canada with a median age of 37.4. We do actually bring in, our population grows about 2% annually, and a lot of that is due to the low cost of ownership and living here in Calgary. One thing that the downtown is known for, we have the highest concentration of head offices. Part of that's because, again, heavy into the oil. That's changed a little bit over the years. Lots of vacancies, lots of companies have moved out of Calgary just due to the, policies in place on, federal level. They've gone to, more economical places for further HQs. So we have transitioned more into tech. We have a lot of tech companies coming in, which is great because it's diversifying our market a bit, filling up some of those vacancies. But very business minded here in Calgary. It's everyone has a very can-do attitude, especially with the ebbs and flows of, again, the booms and crashes. Lots of people here are just used to, clawing back from the layoffs, transitioning, pivoting. It's a very can-do attitude here in Calgary. So also ranked number 5 most livable city in North America, which is pretty crazy. I didn't actually know that until recently. I don't think it's been that way this last year with the lockdowns. I don't think anyone's enjoyed living where they live. But I'm not sure how things have been in Ontario, but they've been pretty tight until now up here in Alberta.
But yeah, those are some interesting stats. Like there was a few there that I wasn't aware of. The tech thing, for one, had no idea that it had the highest concentration of tech workers in Canada. So that's fascinating. And I think that for a lot of people that live, in Ontario or BC, it's often easy to think or forget that they're not necessarily all of Canada and that there's a lot of Canada out here.
No, absolutely. That's when I lived in Vancouver for the 5 years, I honestly never thought I'd come back to Calgary. I thought that's the best place to live. It's beautiful. And then it rained 30 days straight. And I was like, I hadn't seen the sun in a while. So you definitely do notice it coming out here. That's a beautiful city. We actually have second lowest cost of living in all Canadian cities and 9th in North America. So if you're looking at a place to actually start a family and start building up a real estate portfolio, there's very few places that you can do that as easily as Calgary, just with the overall cost of living and real estate itself. We're home to lots of pathways. Apparently it's first in North America for outdoor pathways. You can literally bike all across the city, down the rivers, down the parks, and it's one of the easiest commutes as well. Just like we talked about before, huge roadways, and it's got the infrastructure to support that development in the future. There's been a huge push because of the sprawl in Calgary, like one of the biggest actual footprint per capita in North America, that we've been kind of pushing upwards rather than outwards. Our mayor has been pushing it the last 10 years for encouraging more multi-residential. So lots of these new communities are very diverse. They have, their sectors of townhomes, multi-residential, and single family. But typically, historically, all you see is single family homes, detached garage, back alleys, big wide lots. And that has changed quite a bit over the last few years. Things are getting a little more dense and condensed just to save space. New development, I want to talk about this just because it is important, just with the overall health of Calgary and the real estate market as well, and just overall attraction to Calgary. There's a huge project coming that just broke ground earlier on this year that's set to complete in 2024, and that is our event center downtown here. So it's called the BMO Center. It's been home to many events, including the Stampede and the exhibitions since 1982 when it was constructed. But like lots of our infrastructure, it's fallen behind over the years. 2 cities like Edmonton, Toronto, Vancouver, and Calgary's no longer home to a lot of the exhibitions we once held just because our facilities are kind of outdated. So we're hoping that this project will bring back a lot of those events, including the new arena project that's slated to complete in 2024 as well, which will bring back a lot of those concerts and festivals that we've been lacking for the past 5-10 years. Because Edmonton, right down the road, has a brand new arena, brand new event center, and it's just a lot more accommodating to some of those performances. So again, hoping that this will bring back a lot of that traffic into Calgary, which would be great.
Gotcha.
Have you ever come? You haven't come down to Calgary to watch the Flames game here, Matt?
I haven't seen a Flames game. No, I think I've only driven through Calgary on my way, driving across the country once. But yeah.
Okay. Okay. No worries. Yeah. Yeah. The Stampede's going on right now. Usually we have, I forget the numbers exactly, but tens of thousands of out of town visitors this time of year, and the population of the city goes from 1.5 up to, you'd think, a couple hundred thousand more just based on the 2 weekends of Stampede. But obviously with COVID and what's going on, there's been a lot less out of towners to much smaller toned down version. But that's typically the best time of the year for every Calgarian is right now. Downtown office vacancies, that's one thing I want to chat about, just because in case you have any people looking to invest in Calgary, it's important to know what's being proposed down the line. Historically here, so in 2014, when the crash happened, this is a depiction of what the office vacancies would look like, sitting around 10%, which is, pretty low considering. And then all of a sudden after the crash in 2018 here, 28% office vacancy. This is what this looks like.
Right.
And here is a Q3 graph of 2020 for downtown vacancies across Canada, all major cities. So Calgary obviously sitting at the highest, 28.7. Right now it's actually 32%, which is an all-time high. To put that in perspective, when Detroit declared bankruptcy in 2014, they were sitting at a 14% office vacancy. So 28% is pretty crazy. It's not a good number to maintain. Which is why,
and so with that, are you seeing the city at all move towards more mixed use or allowing for rezoning?
Exactly. So that's what they're working on right now. They proposed this just recently. They've been working on it for years, and they just came out with this a few weeks ago. But they proposed a $1 billion plan to convert office buildings into housing. So mixed use. I mean, obviously, this last year we've realized we don't need as much office space as we once needed. And especially in Calgary, with the amount we do have, we might never need it again, right? So depending on how things are going. Lots of tech companies are coming in, but to fill that much space, I don't think will ever be required. So the city's actually partnered with an architect, Stephen Painter there, and they've been actually identified 6 million of the 12 million available square feet could be really good residential space. Lots of offices aren't going to be great for residential just because they have big interior corridors, minimal windows. But he's actually identified 6 million square feet that could be converted into awesome residential units that could be sold off as condos, which is, it's important to know because if you're looking at investing in downtown right now, prices are very depressed still. But with this development plan, I really am optimistic in the next 5-10 years that the overall appreciation downtown will just continue to rise.
Gotcha. And I don't know if it makes sense to ask this question now, but I know that just because we've talked about condos a bunch, you've touched upon maybe some of the arts and entertainment scene and the potential evolution of that as well. What's it like for a Airbnb host these days in Calgary? Do you know what that kind of looks like?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have a few colleagues actually that have a few Airbnbs. It's a little bit dicey when you start talking about the bylaws. Every condo has its own bylaws. I'm not sure what you call it out there. I know in BC they call their condo company a strata, but here it's just called the Condo Corporation. But they've been cracking down on those quite a bit. I have 2 residential towers right beside us here that used to be full of Airbnbs because of they're close to Stampede, they're close to the vet centers, and they were pretty low cost as well. I mean, $200,000 for a 1-bedroom, nice apartment, right? So they've been cracking down on those. The fines have gone up, and if they see you, it could be bad. 3 strikes, and there could be some bigger things down the line for you.
And just so people understand, is that from an individual condo board, or that's the city that has a rule about?
Individual condo board. Yeah, it's all written into their bylaws. So they can kind of outlaw those.
And do you know, are there any buildings or condo corps that allow short-term rentals?
There are a few. There's less and less literally every week. There are a few, and there are a couple ways to get around that as well. But they're making it a little bit harder on you to do that.
Gotcha.
I actually have one client of mine who he has an Airbnb in one of the condos here close to the Stampede grounds, and he gets a fine almost once a month, once every 2 weeks. But he continues running his Airbnb just because for him the cost is worth it. So
He just views it as a cost of business. Yeah.
cost of business, yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's an interesting way to go. I mean, people still do it. It all depends on risk versus reward, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very excited to see this redevelopment plan because a lot of people right now, like compared to 2014, downtown's a bit of a ghost town. Until this opening happened on July 5th here, like everything got lifted. No mandates, no restrictions, and that really helped, especially with the Stampede and the festivals going on. It brought a lot of people downtown, but typically we've been pretty low on people coming down here. So I'm excited to see this plan play out just because the more residential that we have, the more people and the more things to do. And I think it's really going to increase the demand for real estate down here. All right, so jumping into statistics, just want to give you a bit of a background first before we hop into this. Another area map here, just giving you, again, total residential benchmark prices per district. So there's 8 districts in Calgary. Obviously, the city center has the lowest increase just because the amount of multi-residential, and that is dragging things down a little bit just because, as we just talked about, condos downtown, because the volume of them and how much is available, they're just sitting a little bit lower on the charts. But detached price is definitely leading the charge, 13% increase year after year, which again, I'm not sure how that compares to a market like out there, but for Calgary, that's insane because since 2014, we've seen just a steady decline downwards with a stabilization in 19 and 20, but 2021 has been an absolute spike. Semi-detached, again, probably the second most desirable property for a homeowner. Only one shared wall, no condo corporation to deal with. That's, again, 11.2% increase year after year. And then row and apartments dropping down a little bit lower, apartments 5%, which, again, is pretty crazy to see as well, just because apartments in 2015 were at an all-time high, and then it crashed off. I mean, I just sold a condo last year here that was bought in 2016 for $400,000 and sold literally 4 years later for $302,000. So that just shows you how much things got depressed in Calgary with the condos and just the overall volume of available, right?
Yeah, appreciate that perspective. And I guess just looking at the general map you have there, it seems like, is the west side of the city kind of the higher end or newer or nicer part of the city? I'm just looking at based on the averages, or is that an oversimplification?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The West End here, you have areas like Aspen, Springbank Hill, definitely more sought after areas, bigger homes, bigger lots, and just a little more estate style homes. But yeah, no, it's one of the more expensive
And is that just the way the city happened to be zoned and grow, or is that because you're closer to the mountains? Or I'm just curious if there's any, is there a reason why people like being on the west side versus east? Or
yes, so demographic wise, there's great schools over there. So lots of young families, if they can afford to live on the west areas, like those communities like Aspen Landings and West Springs, one of the best schools in Calgary. Very close to the mountains. I mean, if you live on the east side of Calgary, you're going to extend your trip to the mountains by anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. So that's one of the big desires. You get more mountain views over there as well, more access to all the trails, close to Bright Creek. So it's a great area to live. That's actually where I grew up, on the west side of Calgary there. So I love the area.
Gotcha. Yeah, appreciate that.
But if you're also, a young family and you're looking for something more cost effective, you're going to be looking into more of the deep north area here. Where you have some new communities, great homes, but the cost is just a little bit less. The lot prices are much less up there, which just leads to more opportunities for a first-time home buyer or just a young family. And same thing with down in the south here, where all the new communities are getting built out. Lots of nice areas down there as well. So this is actually a really interesting graph I want to share with you guys here. So months of supply by price range. It kind of shows you what's moving in what demographic. Typically, and I highlighted here, the $1 million plus sector, this is kind of unprecedented for Calgary, how low inventory we have right now. So there's very low months on
Mhm.
market, 4 months compared to in 2019 here, you'll see up to 13, 14 months on market. Because I know I was helping buyers in that sector back in 2019, and the deals that you can have in the million plus segment was huge. I mean, you can basically acquire a home worth 1.5 for close to $1 million, just because the amount of volume there was available. You were bound to
Mhm.
find a seller who maybe was desperate or lost a job, needed to get out of the home really quick. So there was lots of good deals to be had, but to see that drop down in half in the matter of a year is pretty insane.
Yeah, and are you seeing, is that changing at all the way people negotiate on homes? Like, are you now getting more into like multiple offer situations, or is it just more property sell close to asking, or how does that impact you, on negotiations?
Absolutely, it's extremely tough on a buyer's agent side of things. As a listing agent, fantastic. Especially when you go to the $400,000 to $500,000 sector in single family
Hmm.
homes, you can blink an eye and it's gone. And that's typically, even when Calgary was hurting back a couple of years ago and the real estate market was pretty depressed, any single family home in that $400,000 to $500,000 price point in the Northwest or Southeast was selling pretty much instantly. So that's not really changed. I mean, you can take a look at these numbers here in the graphs. That's been pretty steady. But yeah, people who are working in luxury homes in the million plus, I know that wouldn't even buy you a lot in Vancouver, but here it buys you a luxury home.
Hmm.
It's been great for sellers. But again, those same sellers have to go and find something now, and that's a whole different story, because buying a home, we're experiencing competing offers on, it seems like three and four homes, and things are just going and flying off the shelves on day one, day two. So as a seller, I think it's really important and maybe a little bit underrated to do this, but to have hold offers or not present offers for a few days. A lot of sellers and agents get a little bit antsy and they accept, all the offers on day one, but really only a small demographic has had a chance to go through your home at that point. It's important to keep your home on for a long enough time that everyone gets a chance to see it, and thus getting top dollar for your home. When you sell your home on day one, I kind of respond like, "Oh, I'm sorry," because it's too bad not everyone got a chance to see your home. It's important that you don't just sell it on day one. You get a chance to actually let the markets see it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and on the graph on the right here, just kind of gives you an idea of the history of what's going on right now. So just going in from June of last year to June of this year, what's been going on. Inventory levels are in the blue. So obviously they're a little bit high. They started getting a little bit dropped down towards the holiday season. That's typical, just because around Christmas time, people don't want to be moving, especially when it's -20 outside. They don't want to be transitioning at that time.
Hmm.
But what happened is inventory levels were pretty low, sales were pretty low, and then sales levels started jumping up in January, February, basically doubling every month until it phased out, which caused an extreme shortage here in Calgary. The months of supply was down to 1.6 months at one point. So it was incredibly low levels of inventory, very hard to obtain a home if you needed one. So
Hmm.
we're kind of happy to see this balancing out into May, June. You can see the sales kind of peaked in April, and they've gone lower in May and June. They're still record-setting months, year after year, but they're showing a bit of decrease, which is actually really encouraging to see. Inventory levels are starting to climb, which is just creating more of a balanced market.
Yeah.
It kind of actually sucks as a first-time home buyer. I do like working with first-time home buyers. I almost exclusively do, and it gets discouraging when you try to buy a home or for the first time, and you end up going to competing offers with 20 other offers, and some of them
Hmm.
being cash offers, right? So not everyone can afford to go in without a finance contingency or a home inspection as a first-time home buyer, right? They're not very experienced. It's their first time. They want to do things the right way and tick off all the boxes. So when it's extremely competitive time like this, it just makes it a bit more discouraging for those first-time home buyers. So I'm excited to see things balance out a little bit as summer goes on and into fall, just so that everyone gets an opportunity here and things just get a little bit less crazy. But as you can see here, the orange bar just kind of tells you the benchmark price average. So we're sitting basically at levels that we did back in 2014. And the rate of sales as well is very similar to that time. So we went from up here to down here to up here again. So I do feel like this might be one of those times where, when someone told me they bought a house in 2014, I'm like, oh shoot, like you bought it at all-time high, right? I do feel like this time that we're in right now, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, it could be a very similar situation. Like, oh, you bought in spring 2021, I'm sorry. Just because it's a very, high time for pricing here in Calgary.
Yeah, definitely. It certainly is across Canada, right? And I think not to scare people away from wanting to buy, but if anything, it's just really a strong reminder of doing our homework, right? And making sure that we're buying the right property for the right reasons. So again, if you were buying just on speculation, I definitely think that this is a scary time to be speculating in certain markets. And, probably Calgary is one of those. But at the same time, for the person that knows that they want to be there for 5 or 10 years, this is going to be their family home. That can allow us just to make sure we're doing the right sort of due diligence on the purchase.
For sure. Yeah. And the rate of appreciation here, it's a little more flat than a lot of places. It's you're not really counting on speculation purchases here. Obviously, if you can find a cash flow positive property, that's awesome, but counting on it to be increasing in value year after year is just a little bit not really how things work here. Here's a good chart as well. This kind of explains the sales comparisons in every June in the last 10 years. So as you can see, we've actually exceeded that of the peak here in 2014. The last couple of years, though, like 19 and 20, again, were very steady. June of last year was a very interesting time because we just came out of a lockdown. I'm not sure how things were out there. I know you guys were a bit tighter for a little bit longer. But in April, things just disappeared. Nothing happened. The amount of sales that happened, there's just a write-off, right? And then May, halfway through May, things started kind of opening up. And then June was our actual full open. Things went back to work. And the buyer confidence went up a little bit, but the price point wasn't really, there wasn't a seller's market still. It wasn't like people were in bidding wars back then. There were still really good deals to be had on some properties. So there wasn't a huge rush to get into things. So people who actually took advantage in this sector here did a really, smart decision for themselves. But again, things will cool off a little bit into fall and winter, as they always do. Sales will decline, inventory levels will decline a little bit, but still remain a little bit higher, which will just create more of a balanced market for everybody here. And here's some cool numbers as well. Just kind of gives you an idea of statistically what we've been seeing with detached leading the charge. Obviously, sales are up 65% from this time last year, and new listings are only up 26%. So once we see this number climb a bit, we'll just start seeing a bit more of a balance, and that will happen. It's not going to last like this forever. We've already seen a bit of a calming in the market in the last 2 months, so I expect more of the same to continue. But benchmark price in Calgary at $537. So again, 13% year after year. And this is what I say. So all quadrants are different. You can't really blanket all of Calgary in the same brush, and that's why it's important that to speak to someone who knows the area very well. Not everyone is going to know every single area in Calgary like the back of their hand. There's 212 communities, right? So to think that you know everyone is kind of naive. I'm not going to pretend like I know every community like I grew up there. But there are areas that people are more familiar than others, and it's important that you talk to someone who knows the area very well, because there are different trends for every community, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And semi-detached, obviously, close behind, with apartments sitting at the bottom here. So what's interesting to know about apartments, though, so downtown apartments, a lot of people are holding off and just renting them out because they were realizing, how much they paid for them versus how much they can sell in today's market. And they were waiting for things to turn around. So as soon as things did turn around, which is happening right now, a lot more people started bringing their condos to market. But it actually worked out really well for them because the inventory did not get over flooded, because you have a lot of people that are trying to buy homes that realize they might not be able to afford a home right now because the prices have gone up quite a bit. That, as well as the stress test, limiting their buying power, they've realized the affordability of condos. And because things are open now, they're not in a shoebox anymore, like they were the last year. They've become a bit more desirable than they were this time last year. So what you can see here is that the recent price gains have encouraged more people to sell this year, and new listings overall inventory higher than previous years. But because the relative affordability to the detached homes, for example, more people are buying condos and realizing that, there's that much more affordable over the detached homes right now. I had one client actually purchase a condo last week just because he realized wasn't the right time for him to buy a single family home, just with the prices the way they are. So you buy a condo, it's a 2-year plan. And again, it's a great time to buy because the prices haven't increased near as much compared to the detached and semi-detached sectors. So looking at row homes here, sales total is a record high actually since 2007. Sales, sales have been keeping up with that, so it's a pretty balanced market. I'd say still on the seller's side, but a little more balanced than the semi-detached and detached homes leading the charge. I mean, the pace of semi-detached sales growth is showing some signs of slowing. Look at the numbers on the previous slide. It has gotten a little bit slower month after month here, which is, again, it's good for the buyers getting into the market. But yeah, that's all I have for you today.
Awesome.
As far as specific communities go, I think it's important to reach out and ask about each community specifically and what's going on, what the trends are in that area, just because they can vary quite drastically from area to area.
Yeah, really appreciate the summary and you just kind of sharing your perspective as an agent in the Calgary market there, Tristan. And for anyone at home, if you guys have any questions for Tristan about condos, Calgary, anything like that, jump in the comment section, let us know. And let us know if you've got any questions in the future you'd like to see us cover in regards to this subject matter as well. Maybe in a future video, we can dive a little bit deeper into the condo buying process when it comes to Calgary or Alberta in particular. Or if you guys want to dive deeper into that core market, right, the downtown area and looking at condos, I know that that's often popular as well, just the deep dives on the neighborhoods. But again, really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us, Tristan. If you guys want to get in contact with him, we've got links in the video description down below. Really encourage you to shoot him a DM on social media, book a call, jump on. And as Tristan was saying throughout, it's just important that you have conversations with your local experts, right? Far too often I find people, they don't get the confidence to really ask these questions until they bought the property. And it's always too late then to be reaching out to people, getting second opinions, and just having those conversations to make sure that you understand what you're getting into, especially in a market like Calgary, which I think is more dynamic than your average Canadian real estate market. So it's important that you understand what's going on today, not just yesterday.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, you got to reach out to a local professional and be prepared for when the time comes. There's lots you can be doing now, even if you're 6 months or 12 months away from making a purchase.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, Tristan, and looking forward to chatting in the future.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Matt. See you later.